Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Planning Perspectives podcast. I'm Kate Duffy, joined by my co-host, Jamie Hopkins. And today's guest is Dr. George James. He's a licensed therapist, international speaker, and executive coach and CEO of George Talks. He's especially known for his work helping multi-generational families manage conflict, improve communication, and build healthier dynamics to support both personal and professional growth. You may have seen him on programs such as The Today Show, CNBC, New York Times, and TEDx. And he has a new book coming out, I Give Myself Permission, which is hitting the shelves on January 2nd of this year. Dr. George, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Yeah, well, this is going to be fun. We'll get into eventually in the book, I Give Myself Permission. But I want to start off with a little bit of your story, right? You've got Philly roots, but you weren't always from here. I think you've been here longer than anywhere else now, right?
Anywhere else.
That's good. You like swoop now too, right?
I bleed green.
That's good. But yeah, let's give us a little bit of your background. How'd you get here? Then how'd you get interested in becoming a therapist? And just a little bit of your background.
Yeah, well, first of all, glad to be here, excited to be here. And just a little bit of my background. I actually grew up in North Jersey. Hackensack was where I went to high school. And if you go a little bit further, I grew up in a Jamaican household. So I have this Jamaican culture that was a part of my upbringing. And then I came down to the Philadelphia area for undergrad. So I went to Villanova University for undergrad. And then I had a relationship and then some friends. And then I got in the real relationship that turned into my marriage. And that kept me in the Philadelphia area. So I went to all my other degrees have been in this Philadelphia area because most likely because I'm married and my family and I wasn't going anywhere else.
Yeah. Are you still, did your wife go to Villanova too? Is that correct?
My wife went to Villanova. Yeah. She was a senior when I was a freshman and we were just friends then. But then as things progressed, as she graduated, I graduated. Then it went from, as I say, friends to best friends to awkward to then in a relationship.
Well, it's good it moved past the awkward phase,
I'm so glad.
If you were like, no, we stayed there. We got married, but like we just stayed in the awkward zone forever, right? Yeah. So tell me a little bit then, how'd you move in? What was that moment where it kind of sent you towards this psychology and therapist space?
So I think I always knew I wanted to help people or be of impact in some way. And I thought that when I was growing up that I wanted to be a medical doctor. And so in undergrad, I was studying biology and my biology grades weren't as good as my other grades. My English grades, my sociology grades, everything else was good except for my bio grades. So I really had to have one of those kind of like moments of like, is this really what I want to do? And, what's interesting about it, the most difficult part was I thought that I would make my parents upset or that they wouldn't be proud. And so I struggled. Should I really shift? And they actually were very supportive and they didn't care what I did. And so that actually helped me to move from biology to psychology. And then I still didn't know if that was really it or not. But when I got to grad school, learning to be a therapist, learning to help couples and families and family dynamics and all those things, I was like, this is it. And then from that point on, I had lots of mentors and people who inspired me and showed me different paths. And I'm like, okay, this is a good foundation. And from this point, I know there's so many things I could do. And so far, that's what I've been able to do.
Yeah, that's awesome.
We talked a little bit before this about Dr. George's educational history. He has a degree in clinical psychology, in business administration, and in family therapy, which is pretty amazing when you think about the people that you work with. Individuals, couples, entrepreneurs. We talked about family dynamics when it comes to money. Tell us a little bit about how all of that education has helped you with families and all of the people that you work with today.
Yeah, so I'll share that. But one of the things I say in my family is that, my parents didn't have any degrees, right? Mm-hmm. My mother, my father. So I said, I have enough degrees for everybody, right. For them, for me. And then between my wife and I, we have enough for a whole bunch of folks. So education has always been an important part of my life. And when I think about the future and how to really be of impact, and those degrees that I've been able to acquire over the years have really allowed me to know people in different aspects, right? Well, what does it mean to understand self-discovery through therapy? What does it mean for our dynamics in our family dynamics and relational dynamics. Well, what does that also look like in business and how we show up and the roles we play? And then how do we have those difficult conversations at home, at work, in the community? And so the degrees, I think, have really allowed me to show up for people and be there for people in multiple ways. And then, as we all know, you can have the degrees, but you got to practice it. If you don't actually go out there and do something, it doesn't mean anything.
So I have to imagine that conflict around money comes into your office often, whether it is couples or it's young adults managing their finances today, and especially with family dynamics for family business owners. How do you help coach people around the communication aspect of that? Because that can create a lot of friction.
It can. And as you both know, money is one of those things that is so hard for people to talk about. And if actually more people talked about money, and especially if they were able to talk about how they learn about money or what were their backgrounds around money, that would be so important. So I've seen it. I can think about a few examples. One, I remember a couple I was working with where a conversation not only around money came up, but a prenup. And that became a big thing for them around what does that mean? Why are we discussing this? For the one partner, it was a family expectation. No, you're not going to get married unless you talk about have a prenup. And on the other side, it was around trust and what does that mean? And helping that couple talk through that, all the different areas. Well, if you take that, that's the same thing I do with families. How do we talk about decisions we need to make around money, decisions, whether it be in our family trust, whether it be in our family foundation, whether it be a product we're going to launch? How do we communicate about these things that sometimes are very difficult?
Yeah. I find I'm going to ask a question off that one, but I find the prenups always to be super interesting topics. It's probably one that's worth a show at some point because I find it such an interesting area to discuss, right? The conflict it can create based off your backgrounds, right? Where some families, it's normalized to have them. And in some, it's like, whoa, like you don't trust me, like right off the bat. And so do you ever get into that, like advising, or you're really just trying to help people work through what their conflict might be around it?
It's a little bit of both, or a lot of both, right? And actually, when I think about where I first started in that particular topic, I was always on the trust side. Oh, like, you're already preparing for divorce and, all those things. And that was shaped by my own family background, my own like awareness and experience. As I've had other experiences and worked with other families, I completely understand the other side, right? Of like how some families, it should be embedded. You should have a prenup because it could destroy the business or the family business if not. So I'm often helping people first to have the conversation, to talk about those difficult areas, to lean into the uncomfortable parts of that. What makes this challenging for you? What is it what do you want from this? What are the outside influences of a part of it? And then sometimes it is advice. Hey, let's talk through this. Can we maybe start this part, or can we get this? Let's get other people involved that could be helpful in you getting this done.
Yeah, I've been on some shows and webinars before with like divorce specialists that work on that ahead of time, and they're very pro, prenups and all this work. And I still have this hold up where I'm always thinking, but like if I spend all my time planning the exit, right? Like I'm always thinking about the exit. Like if I go to a party and I'm just thinking about how I'm going to exit, right? Like I've been ready to exit the whole time, and as Sue knows, who's on our marketing team, I would never Irish goodbye anybody, but no, I totally do.
We know he does.
I think about it. I'm all prepared for it. So then when the moment's ready, like I'm gone.
Right. And once again, my first part of my career was my identity was a marriage therapist.
Yeah.
So to be a marriage therapist and say, let's talk about how you're going to get divorced, I felt like that didn't really match. But then I realized, no, it's really about helping people have all types of conversations, including some things that might mean like, well, what if it doesn't work out? What are we going to do?
Yeah. And I love that. It's challenging things, right, that we, from our own past, that might not be true. And there's a very good reason for these things. So yeah, I love that part.
Yeah. And there is evolution of relationship. If you're planning for the next step, it might not mean divorce. It might mean death.
Yeah.
So it is, how do we help foster the conversations in these coupleships to have the open mind? Because we all come from different perspectives. We think about our influences, our experiences, and how we come to the conversation with different filters that our experiences shape how we communicate.
Yeah. And, as you and I had an earlier conversation, this really leans into like our family roles and identities that are shaped. You know, I learned this, and it was so fascinating that like our sibling position shapes decisions we make in relationships, with business, with career, with money. And you would think like, why is that so important? Well, yeah, if you grew up as the youngest, right, in a family of 3 or 4, you're used to things being done for you. You're used to, and sometimes you might feel like, oh, well, I need to go out and like prove myself. Or maybe you're just also still used to things being done for you. Like it can show up either way, but that impacts how you show up in business, in life, and in relationships.
Yeah. I find that, that's super fascinating. So like I'm the oldest of 5. I've got 4 younger sisters, and I'm sure, right, that has a lot of impact on me in a lot of different ways. But funny part, like I like doing construction work. I've renovated, 2.5 houses kind of. And, when we were doing the last one, my wife was like, I'm sick and tired of this. Like you're spending all your time doing it. But then I had the conversation with her too. I was like, but you also like this about me, and you wouldn't have married somebody who couldn't do these things. Right. And she's like, well, yes, that's true. And it's like, okay, so you do like this. You wouldn't have married somebody who doesn't do this, but you also were annoyed by this. It's fun, but it was a good conversation. She laughed about it.
That happens all the time. I mean, even in my own life, right? Like my wife and I are really different in terms of like extrovert, introvert, like on the scale. Like, so I'm definitely more of the talker, and like, so we'd be out at a function, or like, the classic was early in our dating life, we would go to church, and like, I'd be the one that would want to stay late, and I'm talking to everybody. She's already in the car on the way home. Like, and so we had to figure out how we're going to navigate that. Yeah. And to your point, I think she loves that I'm able to engage people, I'm able to connect, but it's like, you're on a time limit. I'm already gone.
So let's dive in, if you don't mind, to a little bit of the family dynamics on the family businesses, because you do work with a lot of entrepreneurs. And it's interesting how you have both the business mindset of family members and the family mindset of family members. You have one group who's really focused on building a business, and you have another who wants to have a very calm, peaceful dinner conversation at the end of the day. How do you help families navigate those discussions and bring them to a point where they can make decisions together?
Yeah, so as an example, I really love that. Just think about Thanksgiving, right? And usually at Thanksgiving, you might have lots of family members over, and someone is going to be the one who's going to cook the meal, or maybe multiple people. There's going to be someone who's going to tell the jokes. Like everyone plays these roles, right? But you might also have that person that like is going to act up, or is going to do something that like, hopefully they don't go there, and they often go there, right? And so when I think about family dynamics, is really understanding the different roles people play. And what I tend to do is then have relationships with them. I build one-on-one connections to learn where they are and what is important to them, and then take that to the wider family. What is the family trying to do? And at Thanksgiving, we're trying to have a good time, but sometimes that might not be as comfortable, and we might need to change. The person who has always been the person that cooked all the time, maybe there's a transition. That's legacy. That's succession. Maybe it's now another family, a new location. How do we figure out how to do that? That takes a lot of conversation, and letting someone know that just because you're not cooking the meal this year doesn't mean you're not important, doesn't mean you're not valued, and that someone else can do it, or it can be a different location. But that is hard for so many families to transition, to change roles, to make somebody else step up, or to even encourage people to lean into it's your turn.
Yeah, I took over Thanksgiving cooking, right, a couple years ago. But I feel very insulted by my mom because she doesn't like my gravy. So like the last 2 years now, she's like, but your dad still needs to make the gravy. You can make everything else. That all passes the test. It's all great, but not the gravy. Like that's it's not been passed over to me yet. So I'm just like, eventually this gravy, I got to practice or something, because I can't be getting shown up on gravy every Thanksgiving.
And what's funny about that is like these are the things we're negotiating in our families and in business, right? Like who is going to really run the business now? Who's going to run the foundation? Or who can support it? Or who maybe shouldn't even be a part of it? Don't even step in the kitchen. And for us on a family aspect, when my wife and I got married, we were trying to figure out how do we bring our families together. And the one way we did that was that we hosted for Thanksgiving. We brought them together. But what's interesting now in our family is that the folks who are really like younger are now partnered and getting married, and they now want to host, and we don't want to give it up.
Yeah.
So now it's that tension of trying to figure out what's that next move. What was the solution for us at one point is now have a time to change.
How and when do you get brought into these family business dynamic conversations, right? My assumption is, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, you actually get brought in once there is an issue 99% of the time, right? But do you get brought in like ahead of time? Like, do you just people hear about this and say, you know what, we should do this before we enter into the next stages, or when estate planning is occurring? Like, what are some of the, I guess, trigger moments where somebody should be saying, hey, like, I need to bring you in?
Yeah, to your point, I think it's definitely when there's an issue or there's a crisis, right? Where something is happening and they're like, we need some help.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes families will bring me in because, oh, they heard from another family. Oh, you know what we did when we were in that position? We actually got someone who helped us to kind of navigate family dynamics, and that really worked. Or sometimes they might realize that they heard it from someone they're working with, right? It might be they're working on estate planning, and it's like, you know, you as a family, you might want to talk to this other person. The other time, though, that some families who are proactive and realize they're like, oh, we've seen this other family that they've started with the younger generation when they're in single digits and early double digits, that they were doing this work. And they're like, wow, we should probably do that. As you know, folks love to see what other people are doing. And if it's working, they'll do that. So that's one of those moments where they're like, how can we start this in our family going forward?
Right. And it all requires change. And as we were talking about, change requires three things. People have to perceive that a change is needed. They have to perceive that they have the ability to change, and they have to be ready.
Yes.
Which can be sometimes the longer part of the evolution of getting from point A to point B, because sometimes people just aren't ready and they need the help.
You're right. And for a lot of the families, they realize this is not working, or the way that we've been communicating. I say my Hamilton spin on this is what I try to do with families is try to help them conflict less and communicate more. Right? Like, how can they figure out, well, this is just not working. How can we reduce this conflict? And how can we communicate more? And sometimes they just keep doing the same thing and they're just having more conflict. And what we tend to do is that with this conflict, we separate, we create distance. And that impacts the business or the foundation or even Thanksgiving, right? Like, it just shows up. And so we really helping people to be ready for the change and to then guide them through that change.
The communication point is really important because we all have our agendas in our head and we want to get that in front of whoever it is that we're talking to. But the listening component is so important. And we're often not taught how to listen. So how do you help coach your clients through listening to what others have to say?
A lot of times I'm the translator, I'm the facilitator. So what happens for many families is that they don't really hear each other or listen to each other, but I can hear them and then I can translate to the other family member. And I do that over and over again. And then as I'm doing that, I'm now getting them to do that on their own, that they can't do it on their own right away, but eventually they can have the conversation. They can communicate with each other without me, but initially they need me to communicate, to facilitate, to translate for them and help them in the process.
Yeah, I think that like, when do you hear things and when can you listen to different people in your life is like super fascinating, right? It's not just family. You think about like people you work with, friends, and you can tell them something, they don't listen at all. And then they like watch a podcast. They're like, do you hear that this person said? I was like, yeah, I've told you that like 300 times, man. Like, yes, like you should not be, on your phone trying to sleep. It doesn't work. Like, it's bad for you. And he's like, I saw it on a podcast. And you're like, yeah. But like that resonates, right? Because it comes from a different place. I think in families, that's a lot of times the case too, right? Like, it's hard to listen to the advice from particular relationships, but then you're able to kind of bridge that in these conversations. So it's kind of a follow-up one to that. When we started with this, but this conversation around money and where people come from in their past, I think it's very hard for people to articulate often that first money memory, or if they came from a scarcity background, or if they came from an abundance background. You get families that, actually might have come from the same socioeconomic world, but actually one feels like they came from abundance and the other one feels like they came from a scarcity background. So I assume that part of your world too is bridging that and helping them re-communicate around how they feel about money.
Yeah, all the way. Like, as you were saying that, I thought about even my own upbringing and how you could actually be in the same household, but the outcome could be different, right? So my family barely had money. We had enough to to eat and so forth, but there wasn't any brand name anything, right? And so what happens for some folks, right, when you come from maybe not having as much, you do one of two things. You either say, as soon as I get it, I'm spending it all, or as soon as I get it, I'm saving it all. And what's funny is that on the other side, if you come from an abundance experience, you could do the same thing. Oh, I have it all, so I'm going to spend it all, or I have it all, I need to keep it. And so it's really trying to figure out where they are and how is that helping or hurting them in that particular position. And oftentimes getting into those conversations where people can say, yeah, you know what? I'm scared of losing, right? I'm scared of all the money going, even though we have a lot, I'm afraid that this next move is going to make everything go away. And then how is that shaping your decisions? And that's where we can really get into some really good conversations.
Yeah. I'm going to share a quick story. I've probably been talking too much today already, but that's what happens when you give me a microphone and 7 cameras.
Well,
right?
Let's go.
You know,
I could be here all day.
Yeah.
I mean, I got enough stories.
But so that one of it's the most big aha moment I've ever had around like the same, the same set of events, but totally different experiences from it. And I do talk about elements of this story a lot because it was formational for me. So my dad passed away when I was 8. I think I've told you that before too. And then it was in my last book, I wrote about it. But my experience with it was so fundamentally different than my mom's experience, which was super interesting because as an 8-year-old whose dad passes away, for me, there was this scarcity around money because like at 8, I understood that like the person who goes up on the roof and hangs the gutters and the roofing and like soffit and fascia, if he can't do that, like money doesn't come in. My mom's experience though, and she was like mad at me about this at the time, and I totally understand her point, like, but that was not her first money memory. She was an entrepreneur. She didn't go to, she didn't graduate college, but she built this company with my dad. And so her view was like, I'm a resilient entrepreneur. Like I will figure this out and I have to for my kids, which is a totally different experience when you think about like an entrepreneur overcoming challenges versus an 8-year-old looking at this like it's the end of the world. And so, but it's funny, like my story, when she read it, she's like, but that's not what happened. And I'm like, well, like it's what happened to the 8-year-old. And like, but I didn't really, like, I couldn't tell her story. And we had never talked about it until I wrote the book, but she actually didn't like it. Like she didn't like my version. But it was funny, but I was like, but mom, like that is my version. Like I didn't like make it up. Like that's how I felt. But yeah, it was very interesting. Like that's just like very in your face. Like, wow, like these were totally different experiences. And I'd never thought about like, that's really my first money memory of like substance, but it wasn't hers. Like she had thousands of other important money memories before that.
No, and I really love that because for me, I'm really big on narratives and stories and the stories we tell ourselves and the stories that people tell us about ourselves and how much do we take that in. And, what's really interesting when you say that for me is that your mom's like, no, that is not my narrative, right? Like I'm strong, I'm independent, I can overcome, adverse things. And even like sometimes what might be embedded is like, I'm not a fragile woman, right? Like, I'm more than capable of handling, yes, I'm grieving, but I'm also capable. And that to me, that just sounds so powerful.
It is interesting going back to the 8-year-old you too, because what we know is that kids straddle like the reality that we live in and then this very creative world where they have like, stuffy fights or parties or imaginary tea parties. So in that mindset, you're working out really difficult things with part fact, part fiction, which gives you a little bit of control over the situation. And I think when you talk about working with couples and uncovering those stories, it's coming with the open mind, the recognition that there are these similar circumstances that people walk away with incredibly different beliefs and experiences, even on the surface if it feels the same or looks the same.
And it shows up everywhere. It shows up at work, in family businesses, family foundations, in our relationships, in our friendships. These roles, identities, stories, and narratives that we have show up in how we even make choices and decisions.
Little boys spend a lot of time imagining how they would fight dragons or ninjas if they ever broke into the house. It's not really likely, but like exactly like your move set that would show up at that moment.
I would imagine like, okay, if something goes bad, how can I rescue the situation? What am I going to do? Nothing.
You were a lot more agile in your mind,
Oh,
right?
yes.
You
I
could
would
flips
swoop,
over
right,
stuff,
yeah.
swoop through.
Like I would count out the steps. I'm already there. No, fall on my face.
I just want to circle back for a second to the mindset of scarcity and abundance that we just talked about. Is there ever enough financially? What does that mean for someone's mindset and their actual finances?
I think that once again, in this larger context, probably more so maybe in this US context, that it never feels like it's enough because there's always somebody who has more, always someone who's maybe doing it bigger, maybe even better. And there's a way that sometimes we internalize that to say that we're not good or not good enough. And so I think that's there. And then I think also what I mentioned earlier, that there's so many people who feel like, well, it could go away tomorrow. So if it could go away tomorrow, I need more. And I need more so that it doesn't go away. And you're always chasing that. And I think that gets back to the place of what is real joy, happiness, satisfaction, even purpose. And sometimes it is having more, but also having more, not just money, in my opinion. Sometimes it's more family time, it's more experiences, it's more laughter, and getting people to really balance that out. And that the scarcity, sometimes we so focus on, I don't have enough money and I'm chasing that. But now I haven't spent time with my grandchildren. I haven't spent time with, the folks that I really care about because I'm chasing that more.
I love that. For time perspective, I want to make sure that we get to the next element. So I want to hop over to your book, which is sitting on our table here, right? So I can see it. But we got to see you talk about this actually recently with the team here too at Bryn Trust. But I give myself permission, as Kate mentioned before, it comes out January 2nd of 2026. So super excited. It's on pre-order now, so people can go buy it and get ready for it. But tell us a little bit about the book, where this came from, the message in there, and kind of what you're looking forward to around its release.
Yeah, thank you so much. So a lot of this actually came from what we've been talking about, right? So my work has just evolved, working with individuals, couples, leaders, athletes, entertainers, families, businesses, and what I just saw over the years. And I think the pandemic really pushed this further of how many people are just overwhelmed by so many different life stressors, no matter where you are, no matter what your situation might be, that you feel these things. And what I recognized was that sometimes that results in people not giving themselves permission to do X, whatever that is. And I recognized there were four main things that really kind of gets in our way. And I call it societal stress, like all the things we got to deal with, maybe caring for family, maybe figuring out money stuff, or maybe grief. Those are just societal things. Then there's leadership stress. There's just something unique about being a leader, and that comes up. Then there's injustice, that more people than we realize are experience some form of injustice at some part in their life. And then there's family of origin stress. What did we learn from our family that shapes our ability to say yes or no in certain situations? And the example I give is my mother, who has passed and dealt with Alzheimer's, that she struggled to give herself permission to travel and see the world because she was given to everybody and not herself. And I think more people, more leaders, more executives, more folks who are running around trying to do so much, maybe on their second or third shift at the job and not giving themselves permission. So it's my joy to be able to say, like, well, how can you give yourself permission in particular areas? To be bold, to not be perfect, to maybe take some risk, to maybe like work on your own self-care, healing, forgiveness, and so many other ways that it's just really been impactful to do it as a keynote and now as a book.
All right. Well, super excited for the book to be out. And so a couple other things. Where can people follow you, find you? I assume the book's going to be most of the normal places, but anywhere in particular you want to send people to go check it out?
Yeah, so it will be, thankfully. It will be available on Amazon, Barnes. Actually, right now. You can pre-order it right now, and then on January 2nd it's out. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Target, Apple Books, everywhere.
Everywhere.
And I'm in the process, as of the date of us doing this podcast, of recording the audiobook. So it'll also be available on Audible and as an ebook. And so I would love your support. I'm excited about it. And the combination of being able to do the talk and then have the book to extend that message has just been amazing and powerful.
Okay. And social or websites for you?
Yeah, so the best way to find me is georgetalks.com. And my social for Instagram, LinkedIn is @GeorgeTalks. You can find me there, and I would love to hear from you. And look, I love this conversation, and I would love to be able to even deepen and continue it.
Thank you for being here today. We are so excited to have had this conversation and really enjoyed talking with you, Dr. George.
A pleasure. Thank you both for just the opportunity to be here.
Yeah. And thank you everyone else for listening to this week's episode of the Planning Perspectives podcast. Make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast app or channel and never miss an episode. Until next time, stay safe and healthy.
Thank you for listening to the Planning Perspectives podcast. Don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes are available. Visit our website at www.bmt.com or call us at 833-973-7633. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Investments, not a deposit, not FDIC insured, not insured by any federal government agency, not guaranteed by the bank, may go down in value.